we see our review is the review of Michael Haas, and Michael Haas's his obligation is the review of staff, and that's where we left it. Personally, I have all the confidence in the world in Mr. Judnick's ongoing work as the attorney for this commission. Everything I've seen him do to date is with integrity and in the interests of the voters.
Can you help clarify this question about the creation of a folder within the former GAV's files in 2012 labeled opposition research?
One of the reasons we asked for an attorney to be appointed by the governor is, as members of the Wisconsin Elections Commission, we are not privy to the prior GAB. We are not included in any of the prior orders. I personally asked Mr. Haas to ask DOJ for counsel here today to help us. We were told that because of DOJ's role in the creation of the report itself, that the commission would need to ask for its own counsel from the governor. So that's what we're doing. Until we have access to all that information, I can't answer that question, sorry.
Do you have any reaction to the report itself and the findings that the Attorney General made last week?
My response to the report led me to vote today, along with my fellow commissioners, to stand by Mr. Haas and his decision-making 100%. And beyond that, I'm not going to get into the polemic of the ins and outs of the report. I've read the report. I've asked the governor for a lawyer to give us access to additional information. Till I have additional information, I'm not going to weigh in on the nuances.
The Ethics Commission, under similar not having information and access, has said there are omissions and inaccuracies in this report. Has this commission drawn any similar conclusions?
I don't know what the Ethics Commission looked at or the basis for the report, and we have asked the governor for a lawyer to let us know what's at issue.
Do you, I mean, having an attorney is one thing, but there's some information that you're not privy to because this whole thing was secret. Do you want to have that attorney read into the John Doe so that they can get additional documents so you can independently determine what happened here?
Well, frankly, I'm personally going to ask the lawyer to go get us this letter that is being submitted by separately. There's a reference in the report for a letter that, that I want to know what's in the letter.
You're talking about the sealed letter that Schimmel said he was filing alongside the report?
Exactly. I mean, my assumption is that everything that there is in the report. But that's just my assumption. And I say that just as a lawyer. If I'm putting together a report, I'm going to put my best evidence in the report. So my assumption, if it's not in there, there isn't anything there. But if there's a reference to a letter, and I don't know what that letter is, and I think as chair of this commission, I'm entitled to know what that letter is.
Is the attorney for your commission meant to somehow represent Mr. Judnick in a contempt of court proceeding, or how would that?
No, right now the commission has asked for a lawyer to help us evaluate the orders and what information we may have, what information we may need to have access to, if any. And just personally, I'd like to see the letter.
In terms of Mr. Judnick, because you said you had confidence in him, but he's the one who's specifically called out in the AG's report in this commission.
Well, I don't know what you mean by called out. I mean, I read it carefully, and
he's recommended for a contempt of court proceeding.
And that's why I've asked for the letter. I'm a lawyer. I haven't read anything that gets to contempt.
You asked for the lawyer, you mean?
I said, as a lawyer, I haven't read anything in the report that gets close to contempt, personally.
So you don't think those proceedings should occur based on what you know?
it's not up to me to say whether proceedings should happen or not. Like, the Attorney General is going to do what the Attorney General wants to do. And my job as chair of this commission, and the commission's job, is to make sure that we have fair, efficient elections and try to avoid any distractions. And I'm very proud of the fact that today this commission stood by our administrator, and we're committed to our mission, which is to make sure we have fair elections in 2018. And I do not want to go back and relive the past, and it's not my job. I have no interest in it.
Who represents Mr. Judnick, though? Since he's employed by this commission, who would represent him in a contempt of court proceeding?
I have no clue. Right now, I don't know.
I mean,
I don't even know if he's whether he's got a lawyer.
But he's still. I mean, again, he's employed by the commission, or is he not employed? I mean, I just want to make sure I'm clear as to what's going on with him.
Of course, he's employed.
Okay.
He was here. If you were at the meeting today, he was here. He participated. He reported.
In the closed session? Because again, you said the statement about Mr. Haas. Mr. Judnick's also been sort of called out for being terminated by Senator Naas. So you didn't make a statement about him. So I'm just wondering, is there a specific reason for that?
I think I said it. I think the commission's role is to oversee the administrator, and the administrator's role is to oversee the staff, and that's just the way it is.
Can Mike speak to that?
So, as to whether Mr. Judnick goes, it would be up to Judnick and Michael.
In terms of what?
If he were to leave, is that a decision that Mike
What do you mean
Haas
if he were
makes?
to leave?
Well,
I'm unaware of
Steve-
anybody
Steve-
here. Just
Steve
put it
Naas
this way.
has called for him to resign.
And Mr. Naas he can call for anyone to resign. That's his right. He's got a First Amendment right to say whatever he wants to say. Frankly, I think Donald Trump should resign. So, so what? If you want to know my, just my opinion on that, but so what? And I say that personally, not as a,
I get it.
it's my personal response. Maybe I'm getting tested. It's late.
Is Mr. Haas able to speak to us too, or what's?
He's always Mr. Haas has always said what he wants to say, right? And
So Mike,
if you want to ask him questions, feel free.
Thank you.
you stand by Nate.
I thank you all.
Thanks.
Thanks.
You stand by Nate.
Absolutely. Nate Judnick's done an excellent job, both with the Government Accountability Board and Wisconsin Elections Commission. He's worked hard over the last 12 plus years in various capacities, serving the voters, the elections agency, the clerks, and there's no reason that I have to doubt that would continue.
Do you want to say anything to Naas? Also called for your resignation. Do you have any response to that?
Well, any elected official in the state of Wisconsin, I guess I would say first, is entitled to their opinion. It's really built into what the mission of our agency is. They're elected representatives, and they can have their opinion. Personally, I don't think it's right to express an opinion that strongly without being privy to all the facts. And by the nature of this proceeding, there's a lot of information that is not in the public realm or that other elected officials are aware of. I met with every single senator making the rounds during introductory meetings earlier this year and late last year. Those meetings were almost universally civil and supportive. I talked about our agency budget. I talked about the confirmation process. And frankly, it's a disappointment at this time to hear some of the comments. My intent is to ask those senators to have a conversation and see if I can answer their questions about the Elections Commission going forward.
Can you speak to the opposition research file?
Well, I think again, we're a little bit handicapped because the proceedings were mostly confidential, and I'm further handicapped because I was really not involved very closely in that part of the proceedings. But if you read what's been reported in the press by Mr. Falk and also the Ethics Commission statement earlier today, what's been stated is that those files came to the prosecution team labeled opposition research. By the way, those were search warrants that were not issued by the GAB. They were approved by the John Doe judge, and what's been stated publicly is that those were labeled that way when they arrived in response to the search warrant. So
the AG's office put out a statement just before this started where he specifically details that these files were named according to their metadata in 2012 when they were in possession of the GAB. So the AG is very forcefully concluding that these were, the file name was created. Is there any, how does that explanation?
Well, I'd have to see what they said, but I think each of the investigations had a GAB file number, 2012-1 or -2 or -3.
Talking about metadata in the GAB's computer.
Right, and so my understanding of the public explanation has been that the GAB likely filed those documents as they were labeled when they came over. I know for a fact that the Attorney General's office was provided an explanation about why those files were labeled that way, and for some reason they chose not to include that explanation in the report and instead indicated that they could not conclude why they were labeled that way. So
do you know whose interview that was in? Or?
I don't believe I'm at liberty to say.
Not yours.
Not mine. Right.
Is there a specific attorney you're going to be asking for when you request this from the governor?
We haven't gotten that far, and I don't know that we have the option to pick an attorney or to request a specific attorney. We have been advised by the Department of Justice that the proper procedure, because of their involvement in the report, is to ask the governor's office to appoint an attorney.
Do you feel reasonably confident that will happen, given that the Ethics Commission got private counsel on this matter?
I'm not going to make any predictions about what they will decide.
Steve Nass's office, they specifically were calling for your resignation because of your involvement, I guess, in drafting some of the legal briefs in the John Doe. Can you speak to just what specifically your role was in the John Doe investigation? Sure.
Senator Nass and I discussed this when I visited with him and his staff. At that time of I was involved closely with the John Doe 1 in that investigation, which resulted in the highest campaign finance forfeiture in the state's history. The John Doe 2 investigation, as it came to be called, I was marginally involved, partly just because of other job responsibilities when I was staff counsel, and then I became election division administrator at the beginning of 2013. And my involvement with the investigation related to John Doe 2 was earlier on in the process. With some of the pleadings, I was asked to basically be an editor and to review pleadings that had been drafted by other attorneys in the prosecution team. I wasn't involved in the legal strategy, many of the meetings, or reviewing the evidence. And so, as the report indicated, my involvement in that investigation was really limited to reviewing documents that others had prepared and suggesting edits, which were really in the nature of writing edits, not substantive legal arguments.
And I think part of his contention is that if the Wisconsin Supreme Court concluded that this investigation had no merit, then that's sort of an indictment of you as having been part of the team that was looking at some of those legal filings. You should have been raising that flag or dissuading them from pursuing it.
So first of all, I was not involved in the legal strategy or constructing the legal arguments. As you know, the GAB had a special prosecutor appointed. There were a number of district attorneys involved that were pursuing the John Doe allegations. When an attorney, I think you also have to understand without relitigating the entire matter, the prosecution team argued its case based on what the existing law was and what it was understood to be for years prior to that. It was all at a preliminary investigation stage. Well, in the end, the Wisconsin Supreme Court did not agree with that legal position. That doesn't mean that the attorneys involved should be sanctioned or their reputations attacked because their legal argument failed. The Department of Justice does not win every case that it pursues, and yet I'm sure their attorneys are not disciplined or chastised for pursuing a good faith legal argument. And as I said, the Supreme Court decided that the law, with the legal theory, was no longer constitutional. That had been pursued and enforced previously.
Did you have any reason to think that the people working on this case, Shane Falk or anybody, was not operating in good faith?
None, not from what I observed. And that goes for the attorneys at the Government Accountability Board, the prosecutors in the District Attorney's Office, all of the former judges on the board who had numerous involved, in-depth conversations about the complexities of the laws that existed. Anything else?
Thank you.
All right, thanks.